So what does the producer's title mean when working on a game like Origin?
What does the producer title mean when you're working on a game like Origin? Well, it means a lot of things. My main job is I have the 3 departments that report to me, the art department, the design department, and the programming department. And the lead manager of each of those departments reports directly to me. And I'm the person who is sort of the judge and jury, the decision maker for the project on what features are going in, what features are going out, and setting the priorities for the game and sort of keeping the vision.
All right, and then who do you answer to as producer?
No one.
Yeah.
God only. No, I answer to my executive producer, Jeff Anderson, and the way we sort of divide the duties is I'm sort of top down and he's top up, so he is our main contact with the rest of the company, the rest of the studio, the rest of the organization, worldwide corporation. So he liaisons with the exec team and our bosses out at EA and at EA.com.
So now, in being a producer for a massively multiplayer game like Origin, like Ultima Online was, what are the chief concerns that you're having to look out for?
The chief concerns that I have to look out for when you're producing a big multiplayer game like this is really the number of moving parts. There's really more moving parts in a game like this than any other game that you would make, because when you think about it, there's almost 3 games in one. There's the client side, which is what the person goes out and buys and installs on a computer. Then there's the server side, which is the part that sits on our servers that we spread across the country that they connect to. And then there's the communication between the 2 of them. And so it's almost 3 games in and of itself. In fact, we even divide parts of the team that way. So there's client programmers, server programmers, etc. And so there's more moving parts than anything, and making sure that all those people are communicating with each other and all those parts work together, so the client always knows what the server's doing, the server always knows what the client's doing, they're always in sync.
So now, do you have to take all 3 of those things into consideration from the very outset, or is there a point at which you start to then concern yourself with one of those 3 large elements of the game?
No, you constantly have to be aware of all of those things, and every decision you make has to understand how it's going to work on the server, how it's going to work on the client, and make sure that there's no discrepancies between the 2. You'll always have to think about that.
Now, what is the process when making a game like Origin? What do you start with, and how? What are the phases that the development of a game like that goes through?
So the first thing we do is we develop a game like this is come up with what we call the design document, and that's a roughly 100, 200 page document that describes how the game systems work, how combat's going to work, how character advancement's going to work, what the fictional setting is going to be like with the main characters, things like that. And then from there we go to the technical design phase, which is based on all the features that are in that design document. We build another document that's the technical design, which says, well, here's all this neat stuff, here's actually how we're going to do it, and here's the things that were outlined in the design doc that we're not going to do. And from there, then you build a schedule, and that first phase takes, depending on the size of the game, anywhere from a few months to even 6 months at a time, depending on the size and the complexity of the product. And from there, you just start building milestones, periodic checkpoints where you assemble the pieces together. And at each checkpoint, you have some sort of thing that you can demonstrate. And so at this stage, we have all the tools that the designers are going to need to start putting the map together. At this stage, we have people talking to each other over servers, things like that.
Now, with Origin sort of and Ultima Online being such open-ended games, and there's obviously a lot that has to be considered in terms of all the possibilities and what is going to happen through someone playing the game. How do you sort of keep that present in your mind and in everyone else's mind as they're trying to go through the production process?
So yeah, a game like Origin is much more open-ended than Ultima Online too. There isn't, in a way, a single-player game is really an easier premise to get around, because it's much like a book or a movie. There's a beginning and a middle and an end, and you just got to fill in all the pieces in between. And there's a very linear path for the most part that someone takes, and there's a stopping point where you're done. In a game like this, it's really not like there is no end, there is no winning. You participate in this virtual space, and you come and go as you please, but there isn't there isn't this middle part and an end and a finality to it, because it exists even when you're not playing. The game is there. So really, when we talk about it, a lot of the times we talk about not creating a game per se, but creating this world, a virtual world for people to inhabit. And all the systems that we put in place are tools for them to participate in this world rather than play a game.
And also in the production of the game, unlike most single-player games where when you're done, you ship it, you send it off, and you start looking to a new game.
Right.
When you're playing these massive multiplayer games, you have to still keep on working after it's been released because there's much that you still have to learn about how the game's going to work if you go into some detail.
Yeah, so in a packaged good game, when you're done, you basically put it in a box, you put it on a shelf, and you sell it, and maybe you release a patch. So for like a month or so afterwards, you might release a patch, or maybe not, hopefully not. In a game like this, you're constantly having to not only add content because the players are subscribing to a service, and so you have to provide them with new content to keep them interested, but you also have to adjust the game based on what the players are doing. Sometimes they do not so nice things, and you become, in a way, you transition from a game maker to a government. And the analogy we like to use a lot is people are constantly coming up with ways to get around paying their taxes in the real world, right? So the law constantly has to be updated to close all the loopholes. Like, okay, well, if you go put your money in a Swiss bank account, you still have to pay your taxes. Well, we have to do the same exact thing where people figure out loopholes in the game to make money quickly, or take advantage of other players, or get things faster than they're supposed to. So we constantly have to plug all those loopholes that the players are constantly discovering. So in effect, we're passing new laws constantly. And so this what we call the live team, is basically a miniature development team that's on the project in perpetuity.
Okay, now, in your mind, how do you compare the development process of a single-player game to something like Ultima Online? I mean, are they two different animals? Do they have, on some level, some similarity?
There's some fundamental similarities. I mean, you have people in similar roles. You have artists, designers, and programmers. You have the same sort of processes for creating the schedule, for maintaining the schedule, things like that. But as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot more moving parts, so it's a much more complex animal. And really the biggest difference, I think, is a single-player game is a packaged product. We talked about earlier that there's a beginning and an end, and it's a packaged good, and you put it on a shelf and you're done. Well, really what we're creating is a service. We're providing a service to the players that they subscribe to. So really what you have to get into a mindset in every decision you make, you have to think about this as a service, not a single product. That this is going to be going on for 5-10 years, and these people are going to continually subscribe to it. So you have to build the game to be expandable. You have to build the game so it's easily maintained and fixed if something goes wrong, and you have to build the game so it's easy to help players. And if they get into a jam or they lose something, you have to design the game so it's easy to address those concerns.